What up, world, and welcome to another episode of Beer Talk Now. I'm your host, D. Neal, and today I'm here with Phil Emerson, head brewer here at Almanac Beer Co. in Alameda, California. If you don't know about it, now you know. Phil, how you doing today?
Real good, Daryl. How you doing, man?
Man, first and foremost, thank you for having me here. Almanac is right next to Admiral Malting, so shout out to Dave McLean over there at Admiral Malting, and love the setup here. Huge facility. Doesn't look like it on the front end, but once you walk in the back, it's crazy. Let's get into it. First and foremost, let's talk about the beer that you have first, and then we'll jump into all the wonderful questions. So what do we got on the flights right now?
Right on, man. I love it. The first thing, the first beer on the left, the brightest, is going to be our Helles. That is, it's called the Not So Secret Lager Club Helles.
Okay.
And that is a beer we brewed with our good friends Reagan from Local Brewing
Shout
and
out
Eddie
to Lowe.
at Harmonic.
Cheers to that.
Who people I just love and respect.
Oh yeah, nice. Always got to get the Helles of the Pilsner to show what you can do as a brewery. So
100%. I wanted to show you kind of the brightest thing we do, and then we'll do some of the more aged stuff at the end.
oh yeah, that's not. It got a little sweetness to it too on that. So
Helles should have a tiny bit of sweetness.
Okay.
Yeah, false sweetness. So it finishes, fairly dry, but we use a tiny bit of tiny bit of caramel and a small amount of higher mash temperature to try and get a little residual sweetness there.
Nice.
So it finishes dry, but you want to still taste the malt.
Yes. Yeah, this is definitely one of those beers where you're like, oh yeah, I'm drinking this. This is an all day drink. I think for especially a lot of people who may be new to beer,
Yeah.
and used to a lager, but still kind of like, I don't really know. You give them this, you're like, oh, got a little sweetness to it, and it's not overpowering, but it's something that just keeps you coming back. So.
Yeah, it's a good beer for if Grandpa only drinks Coors Light or Bud Light or something. You'd be like, all right, let me get you on the crafty side. Try this, a little more flavor.
Definitely. So, Phil, we were talking off mic, and of course you were a UC Davis alumni like myself, but your journey wasn't just out of high school, straight into college type of situation. So let's talk a little bit about you, because we're always going to talk about the beer and the brewery itself, but who is Phil Emerson, and how did this journey of craft beer as a career happen?
I guess maybe I'm a self-described nerd first and foremost. So I love kind of geeking out hobbies. I went back to school for brewing in 2012. I was working in biotech before that, and beer was a hobby that started from a friend. He gave me all his equipment. I was living above. This will be a shout out to Blind Lady Ale House in San Diego. I was living above what was the best beer bar in San Diego. So while I was homebrewing, I was able to bring my homebrew downstairs and get guidance from the owners, Chase, and he would tell you straight up that it tasted bad, but he would do it in a way that was encouraging for you to find the answers. Well, did you try this? You should try that next time. It was always motivating, but honest. I think that's kind of the hard thing when you start homebrewing is, your partner will always be like, oh, it's great, and then you're like, you want another one? They're like, no, I'm good.
That's a telltale sign right there.
Yeah.
I only did one homebrew. It was with liquid extract, so no mashing or anything of that nature. But I definitely thought it could have been better. It was amber, and I was like, I needed to be better. My cousins are very ruthless when it comes to the truth, but in a constructive way.
Yeah.
But they were like, no, they had more than one. They were like, you did pretty good because I'm drinking more than one. So I was like, that's good to know. But I just know from having so many other beers that I was like, there's so much more that I need to do better on. So I'm glad that you had someone who could lead you in a direction of educating yourself, because I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people get nervous about or feel intimidated because they don't want to present it to someone who has experience, because they'll just be like, this is shit, throw it away, and then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
From there.
With beer, I feel like even the hardest part is just getting the right vocabulary, establish what do you taste, if it's good or bad, and kind of once that ice melts, it's everyone has the same language about it, right?
Now what beer in particular were you brewing at that time when you were using the homebrew kit? What was the one that you were attempting to perfect, or what was the one that you enjoyed the most that you wanted to make your own?
So that kind of brought me to how I got to professional brewing. So I started out first, I think I tried to make an amber. I love stouts, but they just kept tasting terrible. I didn't have have the best sanitation. I didn't have temp control. So then I was at the same time, I was in love with sour beers. They were pretty novel back then in 2010, 2009. Russian River was like a thing that you went to. It was like the Mecca trip every time. It still is, but it was really something special. So I made a lot of sour beers, made a lot of farmhouse beers, bread beers, and the main reason is that they were so much more forgiving for that temp control. So that was a pathway I could go that was unique from the get-go and learn about beer, and that kind of propelled my career professionally. I started off making sour beer. Certainly Almanac is known for their sour beer.
Yes, they are. I think it was 2 months ago. It was one that was like, I want to say maybe peach or something of that nature. It was barrel aged actually sour. Definitely, I was like, this is not the sour you're used to. So, kudos to that.
We'll do a sour flight, second one.
There we go. Now, okay, we're really getting into it. So that's the sour light. So sours were more forgiving. What with sours? What were you trying to pinpoint? Because I understand that you are a stout guy like myself. Shout out to all the stout lovers, stout season every season. What was it that you were trying to perfect for your taste bud or your palate to make you feel that you reached the level that you can be like, this is something I can share with people and feel comfortable about, or confident about? Excuse me.
I mean, I gotta be honest, it took a long time to be a little more confident about the brews I was making. Shout out to all the people that mentored me. Mike Hudson, C-Pine, Tom Stoll at Sudwork. Because that was the only way to really learn, was to have someone taking under their wing in a good way. What I was trying to do brewing sours was really trying to make beers I couldn't buy, especially back then. It's a lot easier now. You go into your Whole Foods or you go into your Berkeley Bowl and they've got Lambic from Belgium on the shelf, right?
Yep.
But 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. You had to go look for these in special liquor stores or trade online. I used to trade for beer back in the day. That was a thing.
I didn't even know that. See,
people would trade for beer, and it was like the weirdest. It was like almost like a drug deal with a stranger on the internet, and you just hope you get what you paid for.
So you hope you got the beer that they said that they were going to give you. Right?
Yeah, that it's it's treated right. It's been in the fridge right. And
yeah, exact. Man, we're going to talk about that. Temperature control is key, like you said. So from there, sours, and then. So what was is this your first? Let me not say first head brewer job. Is this your first career position in craft beer, or where did you start off?
I cut my teeth at Sudwork.
Shout out to Sudworks, okay.
That's in Davis. It was a great place to learn. I was going to Davis for brewing school for my undergrad, and got a degree in food science. Food chemistry is my specialty.
All the food sciences we know about you.
And Sudwork was great because Sudwork is a lager house, and they've been making the same lagers for 30 years, and so. I think one skill set that brewers need to learn is precision control, and that was really what lager brewing is brewing the exact same thing, the exact same way, the exact same, every time. So while I was, certainly mostly interested in sours, my day-to-day, 9 to 5 was making lagers, and that was that was a good skill set about habits and about good practices, and I actually ended up taking that sort of approach to sours as we like, for instance, a good sour or lager technique is you spoon the beer, which is like you let it finish out under pressure, naturally carbonate. We do that for all our sours now, and that's a lager technique, but we've applied it, over. So I think taking that sort of science mentality, the Davis, that I was fortunate to go enough that I picked up a lot of those habits. That's how we approach all beers, not just sour, not just lagers, but everything is methodical, everything with intention. Like, why do you do it? You do it for this reason, and if you don't have a reason, maybe you shouldn't do it that way, right? Like, everything should be defensible at least.
Yes.
Intention, I guess, is their.
So cutting your teeth with the lager life, man, like that. So what do you enjoy about lager beer in particular? Because I think a lot of people not say a lot of people, a lot of breweries, we're looking at turnover of like, let's say 2 weeks that we want to get a beer out at the most. I mean, sometimes you might do your barrel age and you'll let that sit, but that's a long period of time. It's not holding up any tank space.
Yep.
What is it to you that why lager should be on the tap board or whatever I can't even get my word right. Not the tap board, yeah, on the menu. Thank you.
Totally, on the tap list, yeah.
tap list, menu, you got to get it right. Couldn't even think about it.
You know, so for lagers, I think part of it's a challenge, and I love a challenge. I like, you know, I'd be embarrassed if I'm making the same beer in 5 years from now. I don't make the same beer I made 5 years ago. Like, you should always be trying to improve it. So I like the challenge. I try others' beers that inspire me. It's definitely a labor of love. You know, certainly an IPA goes much faster. It's hard to argue with hazies right now. That fills our tank space. You know, 50% of the time when I'm brewing beer here, it's actually hazy. Most of our volume is hazy. But lagers represent this kind of you know, and it's kind of, they're coming back in vogue. You know, you're hearing like kind of like, you know, the memes, like it's like they call them crispy boys, right?
Yeah.
Like, we make crispy girl here. That was our response. That was all women of Almanac brewed Czech pills.
Yep. So I haven't had that one. I need to get that.
This year coming out February, I think we'll
All
brew it
right.
again.
There we go.
I guess I definitely want to brew them as a challenge to myself, but also to compare notes with all my peers. That's the main reason for really wanting to always have a lager on.
Gotcha. So Sudworks, and then from Sudworks, was it here or what was your other journey? What was the other?
I came straight from Sudworks to Almanac. I was hired as a barrel manager.
Okay.
That was almost 7 years ago now. 7 years in March actually. So I was hired as a barrel manager, and then quickly I think was able to demonstrate a little more worth and convince these folks to help, to build a brewery together. We built this brewery about 4 years ago. Took about a year and a half through planning just to get there. 2 years almost. We've been open now 4 years in January in this Almanac's Alameda space. Almanac, prior to that, we were contract brewing the wort. I was doing all the blending for sours and fermentation, but there was still a lot left to be desired about control, and maybe that's like my own personality about wanting things to be a certain way, but that was really the reason to build a brewery, was to take our future in our own hands. And I guess I kind of look at it like having roommates that whose dish is this? And
I remember those days,
right?
Huh?
And so when you have your own space and your own brewery, there's no excuses. Like, if you want to make it better, nothing's stopping you. Make it better. So that's kind of been the liberating thing in the last few years for us is I got no one else to blame. If it ain't good, it's me.
Exactly. You're not saying, oh, I gotta free up this tank space because we're contracting for this brewery and it has to be, they need it by this day. It's like, no, your beer is bad because you didn't take the time to make your beer what you wanted it to be. So I like that. Now, how is it working right next to a organic malting company like Almanac? I mean not Almanac, but Admiral Malting, because their mission and their goal, I think it just aligns with a lot of what brewers want to do. But I know cost is always key. But how is it? Because they're just right next door. It's like, there's no shipping costs. It's none of that. So are you getting wholesale prices? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah,
is it beneficial to Almanac to be right next door to
It's a wonderful neighbor to have. You go knock on your neighbor's door and ask to borrow a cup of sugar or something. I can go ask to borrow a pallet of malt. Shout outs to Dave McLean and Ron Silverstein. We wouldn't have this space if they hadn't let us know about their project. They started. They found this building first, and they let us know about it actually. And I gotta really give so much props to those guys. I got nothing but love for both of them. I think the mission they're on is a real noble one. I think people should put their money where their mouth is, and really, if you give two shits about the world, drinking local is one way you can show that. And using local ingredients is built upon that even bigger. I won't tell all the Admiral story, but certainly it's either organic or it's no-till, and what that means is whether they disturb the soil to till it up to do which can cause erosion. So it's one or the other depending on where the malt's grown, and the debates about, or the arguments are out about which one was better, but they're really doing it, and they're doing it the old-fashioned way. It's all floor malted. You can go drink a beer in that restaurant and see the malt being made. It's really pretty. There's something to be said about fresh malt. We don't use it for everything. It is very expensive. So we try to use it only for special beers. We'll try a barley wine label that's all apple.
That's what I'm talking about. So, I mean, and this is just, again, this is a beginner. So before we jump into more questions, what's the next beer we got here? And I want you to talk about that one, the other light before we get to the dark,
Totally.
the stout light.
So the Hellas, to start off, this is the second beer is Loud. It's a DIPA we make year round. Cheers. So this is a big hazy, lots of mosaic, lots of Simcoe.
Definitely smelling the mosaic.
Little cashmere. So a lot of mango, lots of tropical notes.
Oh yeah.
Just 8.3%, so not too big. Pretty smooth.
Yeah, very smooth. And not as crazy thing is really not. I mean, it's hazy, but not like at that level
Not
what
turbid.
you're used to. Yeah.
We use a centrifuge here, and I also don't want any particulate in a beer. Like I want to send a beer out to the market. I want you to be able to pour it from a can, drink it in a glass, or drink it from the can. Either way, but I don't want to sell you solids. I want to sell you just liquids.
I like that. I like that, Phil. No, and this one, again, hazies. Even though hazies have taken over like drastically, like if it's not IPAs, it's hazies. This is a good hazy because it doesn't. I think the particulates that you're talking about, sometimes I think people get lazy with hazies because they're just like IPAs used to be that way until recently. Because everybody wanted IPA, it was like, we'll just pump it out.
Sure.
I mean, like, as long as it was IPA, no one cared. But then you start drinking them, you're like, okay, someone's not taking the time to make this their own. And this hazy shows that you're taking the time to make your own. Because it's not overly hazy because it's centrifuge. But not only that, it's just that flavor is like, you still have the hops, or the alpha acids on the palate, on the tongue, but it has the flavor, the mango, all those things that you're talking about are right into that.
Not too much plant matter
Exactly.
there. They talk about it a lot with overly dry hop beers having like a green burn, or needs a green rest, or it tastes green. And a lot of that's just plant matter and suspension. So using the centrifuge is one way to remove that. And it doesn't translate to the finished product.
I enjoy it, definitely do. So, from the barrel, so the barrel program, you were managing the barrel program. So what does that mean? Like, what did you do? Like, we're talking just barrel age. Like, what does all that encompass to be that manager?
So when I started with Almanac, we had over 3,000 oak vessels, separate barrels, which was a lot to keep track of. So a lot of what I was doing was really trying to, kind of figure out where things are at in their process, when they'd be ready, when they should be, what should be going into it next, what's coming out of it. And so that was really hard with that many barrels. And what we've done over time, you can see behind us, those big barrels.
Yeah, those are beautiful.
We call them fooders. Those are fooders. And they offer a lot of benefits over a smaller format barrel, but the biggest one is, I'm not keeping track of 3,000 things. I'm keeping track of 17 things.
That's a beautiful item. But I do like the bigger barrels, and then also you can hold more in there, and you're not having to go.
Not as much oxygen because the surface volume,
Right.
Yeah.
And then also with 3,000 barrels, I mean, were you having when you say fill 10 of those? Did you have to go around and check every couple of months on those? Like you're pulling samples and things of that nature. I can only imagine if you do more than 5, this probably going to drive you crazy with 3,000.
That was something that sometimes a blend might be 50 barrels. You're tasting 50 to 100
barrels,
which is a lot of things to taste. So it would take a couple days. Certainly, we do check on the barrel program, or the oak aging program periodically. As I've gotten little more like familiar with our house culture, which is a house culture we've been keeping continuous for 7 years now. I brought it over from my homebrewing days even, which is pretty cool. Started off as Saison and Brett and Lacto Breakfast, and it's grown into its own beast. But brewing those, keeping track of all that stuff is you definitely want to check in on those projects as they come along. But what I found is you get so familiar now that I can almost pull a sample and look at it. Just by looking at it, I can tell you, does it need more time or not? Certainly use your senses first. Does it smell right? And, is it progressing the right way? So I'd say we went from checking in on stuff about once a month to checking on stuff like every 3 months now. You just know where it's going, and if it's not going in the right direction, you're like, all right, I'll come back to you 3 months later.
So and you're not having to. I mean, because once it's in the barrel, it's not about we're going to adjust it, right? It's just going to do what it does in that barrel, and then you're transferring it back into your system to make it work, add adjuncts or anything that is needed in that sense.
The main reason to be in the barrel is for a slow fermentation to happen with a little bit of oxygen, and so sometimes it does get better. I'll give you a cool anecdotal thing that's sounds kind of gross, but Brett will make ethyl butyrate from butyric acid. That's the ester, ethyl butyrate, and it tastes like vomit, right? Like it's like Parmesan cheese, the main flavor. It's like it tastes like literally like vomit. It's disgusting. But I know when I taste that, it's a positive thing for the future because that's butyric acid. When Brett takes butyric acid, combines it with ethanol, you get ethyl butyrate, and that's the ester, and that tastes like pineapple. That's the main flavor in all pineapple. So certainly when you're tasting things in the barrel, sometimes it'll be not a good spot, but at least with the context, that there's potential that can go a different direction. The one exception would be vinegar. If you got vinegar, it's bad. It's never going to get any better.
You got to dump. Yeah. And then what happens with that barrel? Do you have to toss it?
We just toss them, small barrels. If it's a foeder, which it doesn't happen for foeders because we really take good care of them. But if a foeder was to go bad, I would try and save it. I would do everything I could to not throw it away. But
I got you. The thing's huge. I
wouldn't they're huge.
Want to toss it either, man. Yeah. I mean, what are those running like cost wise
so we buy those used mostly. The ones behind you, they held Chardonnay for 20 years in a cave.
20 years. Wow.
And so for wineries, they really do have a lifespan that they're no longer valuable to them. So in a sense, they're not that expensive because you can pick them up. It's someone else's used car that you don't mind driving.
Nice. I love those. I love barrel aged, so fun times with that.
It's magical. That's still something that like every time gets me excited for sure.
See, we're gonna get to those very shortly. So with Almanac, what steps? I'm not gonna say what steps. What does Almanac want to be as far as like a beer co, a beer company? Because I think a lot of brewers are just like, we got the brewery, we don't want to contract brew anymore, or we contract brew to help other brewers because we were in that position before. But like, what is it? What's the core that this brewery, the people here, yourself, like when you look back at the work that you've done, you're like, what do you want Almanac to be known for?
I always kind of joke like when I grow up, I want to be Russian River or Sierra Nevada. I look at breweries that have grown in size, that have always maintained quality and have always taken care of their employees. That's like the goal. I don't want to grow and make beer just to make more beer. If we gotta grow, I want it to be because there's a mutual benefit for every person that works here. I think Almanac is certainly a company that it's always kind of showed its appreciation for everyone that does work here in a good way, and that's something I've always been proud of and always appreciated is the fact that it's never. I mean, it's certainly always been work, but it's never really felt like I'm just a cog. I've always got a lot of respect from all of my coworkers across the board. I think we're facing this kind of change right now in the industry that's all for the best and the better. And I think I look at leaders that are trying to be more inclusive, trying to build company policies that are about protecting folks from harassment. And I look at the future of Almanac, and I think that's where we want to be and what we're doing currently. How do we keep building that? Ultimately, beer's become more than just beer. There's certainly a lot of egos and rockstar mentalities, but it's not one person for any business whatsoever. And I think that's what we want to keep continuing to develop is how do we how do we celebrate everyone that made a part of this happen, right? Certainly as a head brewer, I have to answer and be responsible for a lot of pieces, but making beer sometimes can be the easiest part of the equation. It's getting the beer packaged and sold and distributed.
I want to get all into that question.
Yeah.
So with that, transitioning into that, how important is it for a head brewer or just a brew team and marketing and sales to where it's like not the brew team's ego of like, I just don't want to make hazes all the time, or I just don't want to make IPAs, but then also not just have the sales and the marketing team saying IPA, hazy, because you're not going to evolve as a brewer or a brew team if you just continually make those, especially the ones, I mean, just looking at your system, you make an IPA or a hazy, you're gonna make a lot of gallons of this.
We don't have a pilot, no.
Yeah, exactly. This is not
done.
Yeah, this is not like we're gonna test this IPA out and we're gonna change it. Like when you make those changes, it's gonna be very small tweaks because you're gonna sell this because people want a certain consistency. But like, how do you balance that out, and how important is the other side of the brew house, so the sales and marketing team and all the people who just involved to make things go the way that they need to outside of the brew?
You know, it's a reflection of your size and where the beer goes. We sell a lot of beer through our tap room, so that's one avenue that I can do. I can also do half batches on that brew house, so I could do like a 12 barrel batch, and that could all be tap room draft, and we can test it out. But anything kind of past that, you know, really kind of has to go to distro, right? So then that requires a lot of coordination between all the departments. I'll say kind of one of the hard lesson to learn for me as a brewer, but I had to learn early on, is you're not brewing for yourself, you're brewing for an audience. And so it kind of really depends on how big is that audience. If you're in distribution and you want your beer to be, you know, like we're in every Safeway in the state, and you know.
And hold on, don't let that go over that. Every Safeway in the state of California. That's a lot of
Safeways.
That's a lot of Safeways.
I think we're in every Whole Foods. I'm not sure, but you know, we sell 90% of our beer in the state. We didn't used to. You know, 5 years ago we sold 60% out of state. You know, that's really been. I think that's something to be proud of, actually. That most of the beers in our backyard. I mean, California's a big state, so it's a big backyard. But you know, that still means though that most of our beer that leaves this building is going into distro, and so that really requires the coordination from many departments. You know, from art and marketing to sales and distribution to warehousing. I'd say I'm pretty lucky, and you know, I'm pretty fortunate in the sense that I do have the backing from my peers. So when I say, like, you know, I really want to do this, they'll typically go along with the story. If I say I want to make a smoke lager, the answer is no, because they don't want to sell that. But if I say, hey, let's do this special little pretty beer, if I can make a good case, usually I can squeeze one batch in. But certainly, when I write the schedule, it's based upon other people's requests. Like, it's never one person steering the ship. It's really like 12 people steering the ship at once.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that I think a lot of, and I should have mentioned, hey, let's get some marketing people or someone here, because those conversations I think are so much more fun because you get to see how the escalation of ideas happen, but then on top of that you get to get a little bit behind the scenes, not too much because they're going to play nice a little bit on the podcast or the show.
Totally.
But you get to see those kind of like clashes because
there could be some friction.
Yeah, people have to understand that it is a business. At the same time, I understand from you as a brewer side, because you got to deal with the culture. You got to deal with the people who come to the tap room. If you sell a lot at the tap room, you're going to have to see them daily. Marketing and sales, whether they're here at work or they're out there in the field getting your product sold, they're not dealing with the customer every single day that comes into the brewery. But again, to your point, because distribution is such a huge thing, a large percentage of business as well, they have to find that balance as well. So next time, definitely want to sit down. I got 4 more mics that we can sit down.
Oh man, you'd love to talk to Anna.
I want to sit down with the sales team. Yeah. That'll be fun. And marketing,
totally like
graphics, all that. I want them to lose their minds. Like, he's finally giving me a shot. So with that, you talked about the way that craft beer is moving towards more inclusion and more so just not being, we just make beer. Because I think that's one of the things with this show that I push so much is that people look at beer as nothing more than like a dive bar. That you're just like, those are the same people that go and drink it. It's nothing but a Budweiser, Corona, Coors. And it's so much more than that. And they're like, well, why do I want to spend $10 or $12 for a pint? Well, when I can get a 6-pack for $8.99 or $6.99. How do you, excuse me, I'm going to say how. You all have done a beer with Coastal Brewing Company.
Yep, shout out to those homies.
Yeah, that's my homies, my brothers from another mother. But I love what they're doing and what they're Bay Connected, Stay Connected, which they're pushing heavily. What is Almanac looking at, or how are you keeping your ears to the streets pretty much to see who are these new brewers who are coming from that homebrew space to getting their license 17 or 23 or working in or contract brewing with other people? How do you encourage them or build with them to keep this culture of craft beer going like you did with Coastal Brewing Company?
I always think in my own mind, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere without anybody else's help in general. So I always try to make sure if I can help anybody, I'm available. As a business, we've certainly tried to make sure that we're aligning like who do we want to support, right? Because every action you do does make a direct impact on somebody else. So that's certainly a conscious decision. It's not just I never do any collabs just for marketing. It's always like it's based upon who do I like, right? Like it starts with a conversation, but then you get to sort of pick like and choose like how do you want to develop that bigger?
How do you help or contribute to the culture of craft beer by working with homebrewers who are turning into official breweries themselves? And just how do you keep your ears to the streets to find these breweries or these brewers? Because a lot of times they may not walk through them, or they may not come to events that they can get into, like San Francisco opening gala that's coming up for February 2022. Those type of things. Like I wanted to know how do you introduce? I mean, how are they introduced to you?
It's such a small world in beer. I think that's the first one. It's such a small world in beer that a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, right? Like, hey, I heard about these guys. They're trying to do this. Like, and then like, oh, well, let's just say what's up and say, hey, I'm Phil. What can I do or anything like that. And I think that's it. When I started brewing, there was 1,000 breweries in the whole country. Right. This is 2012. There's now 1,000 breweries in the state of California. And I think that's part of why the change is coming too, is that it's so prolific, right? So that's a good reason to like look around and go, like what could be done better.
I wanted to ask this too, is like how is Almanac going to position? How is Almanac positioning itself with that point of 1,000? You got 1,000 breweries in California alone. You have some breweries that can market very well. You have some breweries that have word of mouth because people love them. You have some breweries that are just a staple in their community or the area that they're around. Like how is Almanac looking to consistently keep itself relevant into this tsunami of breweries that are opening? Because it's not. It is 1,000 plus because everywhere in every city of this state. There is every small town. There is a brewery opening up or working on their class 17 or 20. License 2017 or license 23. Like, how is Almanac saying, you know what, this is how we're going to stay the course so that in 10 years Almanac is still a relevant brewery where people want to come and enjoy it?
So I think as a taproom, as an entity where you can come visit us, that's really like the most beautiful thing about beer is. Beer is a lubricant for conversation, right? Like you have a couple beers, you start talking. Like a taproom is the spot where you meet for that lubricant of conversation. So we've held we've held events, we've held a lot of panels. We want to keep doing things like that. Like what can we be a part of where, if anything, it's just providing space for a conversation to happen about anything. We've anything from like punks with lunch. We've hosted the Hello Coastal Boys. We host industry nights, Big Boots. We do. We make conscious decisions about what fundraisers we want to be a part of. We got a beer on right now. It's called Benevolent Vines. That was a fresh hop beer we did this year, where we partnered with the hop farm growing in Sebastopol, all female grown hops, and donated the proceeds of the beer to the Sarah's Project, which is it teaches kids how to grow or how to cook food with like chefs, and then it all goes to Meals on Wheels. So it's things like that where it's like you get to be a part of something like bigger in the community through the simple act of selling beer, but that kind of like makes the next one even more, like the conversation's even deeper now, right? Like we just got to the first layer, let's like, all right, let's scratch the next one, right? Yeah, like all right, we just got past the pleasantries and formalities. Now we're getting like the meat and potatoes, you know, and I think that's kind of something we've been doing for a few years, but I think what we've seen with each one is that the community supports it. Like there's more encouragement for the next one and for the next one. And like, is there anybody we're excluding or not including in this space? Like, okay, well, let's figure out a way. You know, I think that's really kind of what we're trying to do with as an event space is, you know, as a meeting place is, hopefully anyone that comes here thinks, yeah, this is a cool place and I feel welcome, right? Like,
yeah, and again, I love the aspect of we're here for the conversation, and the space is here for the conversation. Not we're facilitating it. We're letting the people who feel a specific way have that conversation, whether individually you agree or disagree, whether the stance of the company is to not have an opinion, allowing the people to come in and to have those conversations and to get past the pleasantries, which I think beer does it very well, because you get to a point where you just get to sit down and like, okay, you feel this person out. How comfortable am I speaking this way? But beer really kind of speeds that up, where it's like, hey, this is how I really feel.
by the second beer, it's a little like
exactly. Right, yeah. You gotta speak your truth.
The nerves goes away.
Always. So what projects are you working on or that are like maybe a couple of years out that you think are really going to just take Almanac to the place where the team feels like, yeah, we're going where we want to go. We're doing something that makes us happy to be here and be on the brew team, be in the sales and marketing team. We're just happy to be in Almanac because these projects are taking us to that level we think that's going to challenge us.
From like a technical standpoint, certainly the last beer we'll try is a good indicator of that. It's an apple brandy stout.
Apple brandy stout.
2 years, tastes like those cool green caramel candies. It's amazing. From kind of talking about what type of beers we're brewing and being a part of the bigger community, we just did the Inclusion Project, which Hella Coastal started with Drake's and Humble Sea. The whole impetus of that is that whoever you collab with, now you guys form, you agree to have a DEI meeting and share what's working in your company, what's not working in your company, right? Like avoid the pitfalls, but also like rapid line to successes. We've got, let's see, what else have we done or we got coming up? We have the Pink Roots group coming up. That's something we do every single year. I think that's what gets, people across other departments excited, is that they get to have inputs now about what those beers can be or who does it even benefit, right? And like, we did a beer called Practice Makes Perfect that benefited Asian American Pacific Islander community, trying to stop AEI-PA hate. And, it's one of those that was started by a couple members of our team, and they get to see the whole thing kind of go through the whole process and actually see the real benefits that it kind of comes out of. So I think that's one aspect that gets people excited. For me personally, like from like a geeky standpoint, what I get excited about, what we're constantly working on is like efficiency projects. Like how do I make something easier for coworkers, like for the production staff? A good example is we just got a keg lifting machine.
Beautiful.
Right? Like, so Isaiah on the team, he's like a weightlifter. Like, he's like, I don't even need it. But if you're not a weightlifter and you don't want to break your back, which is like me, it's like, it turns that 165 keg into like 40 pounds.
Wow.
So, for the most part, that eliminates any body type, gender considerations. Like, anybody now can be doing this job. And so I think that's, from like my standpoint, what I'm trying to work on is how do I get more beer done with less effort? Because that benefits all the employees involved.
Efficiency and operations. I like it, Phil. You're thinking outside the box. You think like an operations manager more than a head brewer, but again, being a head brewer, you are operations manager. You're wearing all types of hats.
Got a lot of help though, for sure.
This did. Teamwork is dreamwork. So let's talk about, before we get to the apple brandy stout, which again I can't wait to taste that one. What's the next beer up that we got right now?
So that's our winter seasonal. This is gonna be Boost. This is done with coffee and vanilla beans.
Nice. This is gonna wake you up right here.
Yeah,
Cheers.
This is about 1 pound per barrel, so there is a significant amount of caffeine.
Ooh, yeah, the nose on that definitely shows. That's like a fresh pot of roasted coffee right
A little bit of vanilla, smooth it out. This one's about 9.5%. This is made with Bose coffee, but every single batch we change up which roaster we work with, which is kind of another cool way to work with different people in our community. Like, just keep finding new roasters and learning about them and trying to source the beans ethically. So that's been really fun, and finding out which varietals work best, which roasts work best.
I gotta say right here, the nose is very strong from the coffee, but when you drink it, it rounds off. It's not very overly has a bitter coffee type of taste of like there's a black coffee, no cream, sugar, or anything. But I like that because it's well balanced. So
Thanks.
Definitely good on that. That is nice. That is definitely well done. It was not what I expected from the nose. So
it smells a little roastier. Like, oh, it's gonna be like an intense one. You're like, no, it kind of rounds out. Yeah, the vanilla helps on that too, for sure.
Definitely. That was just nice. Oh man, I mean, great times. I love you got the logos everywhere. Like you got the setup for the holidays is looking great. But just overall, I think that just this building, really, when you come inside of the building, you really get to see like, oh man, this is really nice. Outside is set up wonderful too because of the patio and you have all the chairs and everything. But coming in here, I'm just like, oh, this is a good space.
It's a rad space. This is all redwood. It's kind of unique. This was built in 1948, so it's just
1948.
It's built for the World War II. There was a train that used to run through the center. It was train tracks when we got it. It was just a cool space that was full of like circus equipment when we came in the first time. Like, it was creepy as all hell, holes in the ceiling. But it was a great open slate. I got to build this space from scratch, and it was just a big open square. So the layout, we'll take a walk around in a second.
Definitely, gotta get the B-roll.
Yeah.
Gotta get the B-roll.
When we do the B-roll walk around, you'll see kind of layout. It was just a blank canvas to really make efficiency, see how things flow.
So you had a lot of say on where you placed different tanks, just all the equipment.
I got to design the brew house. It was kind of a fun run. Yeah, it was not a lot of people will trust you to build their $1 million brewery. I don't know if I'll get the chance again.
And let's talk about that cost. Cause I think a lot of home brewers who are jumping into the space to find a brick and mortar so that they can distribute, self-distribute, and all that. Like a cost for like just a brewery seems just keep going up and up. I mean, $1 million just to build it out. We're not even talking about
I don't know the total of this spot, but it was multi-million for sure.
And they bought this building. This is not.
No. We were a long-term lease.
So you're triple net lease. Okay, gotcha.
We have a great landlord. We were able to work with on this space. Everything costs more than you ever think. That's the truth, and everything takes way longer than anyone ever says it's going to be.
Come on.
That's also the truth. I don't even know, the memes during COVID was the price of lumber, so I don't even know what it would be today. But this building was derelict, so we had to kind of start from foundation, roof, and everything, go backwards. And the proof's there that it definitely is a great space for it. But I think there's a scalable thing there too. Starting out, you can certainly you can go a little smaller, but kind of touch on that idea. I think there's something to be said about kind of cooperatives maybe being the future for businesses that are starting. I think that might be like the real move is how do you get that cost down? Is share the cost between 2 or 3 people trying to really get their dreams off the ground. Not everyone you don't need 3 boilers, right? Just get 1 boiler. I don't know. I think that's really what I would recommend anyone that's trying to get it going is cooperate with someone else that you really respect.
Collaboration is key.
Yeah.
Well, let's finish off with this last beer because I want you to talk about that. You'll tell me about it. We'll drink it, and then I'll ask my last question. And we're gonna go get some B-roll footage out here.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm finished that. That coffee one was nice, well balanced.
So
now let's talk about this one right here.
This is the apple brandy stout.
Apple brandy stout.
Yeah. So
Cheers to that.
Apple Brandy Stout is aged in apple brandy barrels.
Ooh, yeah, you definitely get the nose of brandy in that, and apple, nice apple scent as well.
And so it's 1/2 apple brandy barrels, 1/2 Willet rye barrels. So that's that nice kind of sweet spiciness coming through in the back end. It's a big old stout. I think it's about 13.5%.
That's good. And I like the way the sweetness. It's not up front. It's towards the back end, and then it gets dry on the front end. I like that. That's nice. That's a good setup because it has that. It has the feel of a hard alcohol of the brandy. It warms you up a little bit, but the dryness is really good because it allows you to not. It doesn't coat the palate to a point where you're just like, let me take a step back.
Still drinkable.
Yeah, this actually makes you want to continue drinking because you're trying to quench that thirst on your palate of the dryness, but which is good though. I like that.
Definitely inspired by Firestone Walker, big influence for their program.
Shout out to them.
They make great stuff. So that's something we try to achieve in all beers, from big sweetness beers to even, like Crispy Boys is balance. I like to say you only get one liver unless you're lucky. So you should only drink things you like, right? If you don't like it, just get another beer.
There you go.
And certainly life is always better with balance. So your beer should be enjoyable from the first sip to the last sip, no matter what you're drinking.
This is good. And then I got a bias being a stout guy, but this is the type of beer that I want to drink right now in this type of weather, where you sit back, you have a conversation, and you sip it. And a lot of people just don't see beer like that, and this will change it. They'll have this and be like, oh, this is a relaxing beer. Like, yeah, this is not something you just chug, all right?
No.
You just sit down. You might take an hour.
Yeah, don't have it for lunch.
No. This is at home after a nice meal. Instead of dessert, you sit back with this and you just enjoy it. So, yeah. So what do you see for your future, Phil? As far as the world of craft beer, because it's so huge, and I mean it's continuously growing, not just in the United States, but all around the world. You have so many breweries around the world that are popping up that are taking a lot of influence from the way that hops and malts are used here in the United States, and you have like Australia, you have Britain that's came up a long way on their hop profile and their IPAs, because IPAs weren't as big at that time.
Totally.
So what do you see for yourself in learning and just growing into this craft beer world?
Well, I wouldn't fight trends necessarily, but I wouldn't chase them either. I think if you don't like hazy beer and you don't want to make it, you're definitely missing out on a good amount of business. I have no problem making any style of beer if I know someone else will enjoy it, right? That's the other key. If you're not always making beer for yourself. But if I had to predict the future, which it'll probably be really freaking wrong, is I think look at why these things are successful, right? So look at hazy beer. Why is hazy beer successful? And I think it came on the tails of being this IBU war in West Coast beers, where everything was just so face melting bitter. And you gotta be honest with yourself, like, do you actually want to have the most bitter beer in the world, or you want that flavor, right? You want more, and I think that's kind of where hazy came out of, as a rejection of 100 IBU West Coast. It was like, no, I actually want to have some palate left when I drink this. Hazy wasn't the intention, but that was the result. But really, the intention was just balance. People were trying to get lots of hop flavor balance, not too bitter. And so I think that's kind of the future is, again, is a really appreciation to drinkability and appreciation for balance. IPA is not going anywhere. It'll always be here. It's always going to be the number one brewer, selling beer for a while. I think sours will continue to grow, but never at a pace that competes. The seltzer game is not dead, but I also don't think it's going to grow to replace anything else.
Seltzer life for some people who love seltzer.
Yeah, but again, I don't hate if you do, because you only get one liver. That right now pastry stouts are huge, pastry sours are huge. I think that's going to get corrected, because again, to what you said, like it's kind of cloying. It's like it's not as refreshing. It's not as balanced. Like I think think that's the key to the future of beer is drinkability, because that's how you attract more customers and how you get a bigger audience. Is, you know, it should never be a challenge to drink something, right? Like, why do you want a puzzle as your beverage?
Gotcha. Well, Phil, I appreciate you. Thank you for sitting down and talking on the show. And for this wonderful, cheers again to
Cheers.
this wonderful apple brandy stout out here. This thing is nice, and this is I'm definitely going to get some of this on my way home, because this is my cup of tea.
Awesome.
But again, let everybody know where they can find you here at Almanac, the address. If they have any ideas of beer and they want to shoot an email, give them all that information before we get out of here.
So come visit us down at Almanac Beer Company in Alameda at 651 West Tower. We're open Monday through Sunday, every day of the week. Taproom is. I'm Phil, Fooder Phil on Instagram. Hit me up if you've got a question you want to ask, and I hope to see you in the taproom.
That's right. That was good. That was a good way to end that, Phil. This has been another episode of Beer Talk Now. I'm drinking beer. What are you drinking? And I'll catch you on the next episode of Beer Talk Now. And we're done. Now we get to do all the fun stuff.